Welcome to the Core Women Podcast, the place for women entrepreneurs, authors, and self-starters looking to build community and gain valuable insights through expert interviews with women at the top of their game. Join your host, podcaster, producer, expert coach, entrepreneur, and author, Dr. Summer Watson, as she aims to inspire and empower you through these candid conversations. Lean in and embrace the journey. It's time to start the show. Here's your host, Dr. Summer Watson.
Welcome back to the Core Women Podcast. Today, I'm excited to welcome Harriet Cabelly, who is a therapist, speaker, and author who has spent her life helping others navigate grief and rebuild after loss. She is trained in positive psychology and logotherapy. In 2022, Harriet's world shifted when she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. In this conversation, she shares how walking through her own cancer journey opened the door to surprising personal miracles, a deeper understanding of resilience, and a renewed sense of hope. Let's jump right into this and welcome Harriet.
Hi, thank you, Summer. Thanks for inviting me on.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you here with me. Before we really jump into your professional journey, if you could describe your life to this point in one word and let us know why that word is so important to you, that would be great.
Well, it's a hyphenated word, self-growth.
Self-growth. Okay, tell us more.
Well, we could just say growth, but it's really about my own personal journey. Every time there is an adverse circumstance in my life, and I've had a bunch, I try very hard when I come through it to say, I need to grow from this. I don't want this to be a wasted challenge or a wasted adversity, but I want to take this and use it positively to grow myself forward. And I feel like I've been doing that ever since my daughter many years ago was diagnosed with some disabilities. And I was in therapy, and that was my first journey into turning my life around, kind of, and getting away from the bitterness and the anger and shifting into a different way of living with my new reality. So ongoing growth is the way I want to live my life. And I think I do.
I appreciate that, Harriet. I'm going to take a step back here for a second. I want you to talk a little bit more about living in a space where there was maybe some anger, some discomfort for you. How did you work through that?
You're referring now to what I just mentioned,
Yes.
getting a diagnosis of one of my daughters. Yes. And she's now 42. So we're talking many moons ago. I'm dating myself, right? I'm older with an ER at the end. It was a tremendous loss, which I didn't know at the time. I didn't know that this was called loss, and what I was going through was grief. And when I went to this amazing therapist, and I went because I was feeling so bitter and angry and jealous, and why me? Everything was at that point, why me? Why is this happening to me and my poor baby? He kind of reframed it and said, this is grief and this is loss. I, at that point, only attached the concept of loss when people die. But loss, as he taught me, as I've then gotten into the work, is about losing things, dreams, anything that matters to us that then presents itself totally differently. So in that case, it was the loss of the perfect child. As women, when we're pregnant, we expect and hope for that perfect baby. And then when we get a diagnosis, for me, it was 10 months later, it was the shattering of that dream of a perfect baby and having to readjust and reconform my life to a new reality. So the why me, which is what I went into therapy over because it was sinking me into a deep black hole, eventually started shifting into how and what, meaning the why me. There are no answers for why me. Why do bad things happen to good people? There's no answers. It's a futile exercise because we're not going to get any concrete answers. You can come up with things. Is this a punishment? Am I guilty? And but it doesn't take you anywhere but a deep black hole. But what I was helped to do was shift it into things that could help us move forward, such as, how do I move forward with a new reality? What are some of the new goals and dreams I'm going to be setting? So the questions were different to inform a new path forward.
Yes, I love that. You and I both know, studying theory about therapy, there's lots of different questions from how to what to why to when, all these different questions that each philosopher, therapist, theorist has. And so let's talk about how you help others in therapy with you.
Right. So knowing again that grief is way bigger than just death of a loved one, right? Grief comes from divorce, it comes from empty nesting, retirement, anything that is meaningful to us that then gets lost, so to speak, or transitions. And we have to feel, or we don't have to, but we kind of do have to feel the pain, feel the sadness, feel the emotions, allow ourselves to go into the pain so that eventually we can come through it, which is very hard because as a society, we know we're quick fixers. We want the quick fix. We don't want to sit in pain. So therefore people numb with drinking, with drugging, and that only causes more problems. So not to go down that path, but yes, we need to allow ourselves to feel all the pain and feelings of grief. So in terms of your question, when I work with my clients, it is going into those painful feelings and sitting with them and talking about them and allowing ourselves to feel the gamut of feelings, because it's only when you can go into it that you can come through it. It sounds like it's antithetical, but that is really the journey. And then once we're on that path of the feelings and the venting, which is really what I did with my therapist, 41 years ago, I raged for so long with the bitterness and the jealousy and the anger and all of that until it almost like loosened its grip around me. And I was able to get to a point where I could say, okay, now what? So with my clients, it's allowing for that grieving process, which is feeling the feelings. And at some point, it becomes known to them and us as a team working together that we can start to move forward and say, how are we going to rebuild? How are you going to rebuild your life? What's going to be repurposed here? What can you foresee it looking like? How are you stepping out into the now? And it's bits and pieces. It's baby steps. It's not like all at once I go from horrific feelings to, doing something amazing. It's baby steps.
Absolutely. And we know by studying even folks like Kubler-Ross, she has said there are multiple stages of grief and loss.
Yeah.
And sometimes we go and revisit those stages, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes, like the anger, the depression, or the understanding. Like we revisit
Right.
whatever those stages are at times.
Because it's not a linear process. Like you say, we constantly revisit. And actually, her stages technically were not for the person who's left after the death. Those stages were technically for the dying person.
Yeah.
So they kind of brought it out for the grievers, but
Right.
really it was set up for the person dying and going through those stages. But more to your point, yes, we do revisit it and it's not linear at all. The difference is, and I just want to stress this, that even now when I get down a little bit about certain things with my daughter, I'll go back into a little bit feeling that way. Tiny bit of an upset, bitterness, whatever, but you don't stay there. When you've done the work and processed it all, you can feel it, but it's much more momentary. You don't go back and live in it. It's not as intense. It's more fleeting.
I think something that you mentioned too early on was even when you went through your own therapy and you were asking, why me? One of the things I think is a roadblock for some people is even recognizing that you potentially could be going through grief and loss, just like you did. You were shocked, like, this is loss, this is grief. And
Right.
so just identifying that understanding, that feeling, that emotion many times because we've been told, put aside the emotion, you'll get through it, you'll be fine, and that's what talk therapy is about. It's about recognizing what you're going through, being able to name it, being able to talk through it, being able to process it, and also utilizing tools that really can help us maneuver through it. And the tools could be different for each of us, which gets me into my next question. You spent your career supporting others through loss and transformation. How did you feel when you found yourself on the receiving end of a very difficult diagnosis? And what were the tools that helped you work through that?
And the diagnosis being my non-Hodgkin's lymphoma,
Correct.
which I'm 3 years out. And yes, It is interesting because when I first started my treatment, I remember my good friend Eve saying, Harriet, you now have to use the tools and the concepts that you've been working on with your clients. You now have to start using them for yourself and begin to really grab at them and hone them. So I want to mention one major concept, and then I can get into a couple of the specific tools. That major concept to me that's life-changing is Viktor Frankl's philosophy and psychology of logotherapy, which is the therapy of meaning and purpose. He wrote this life-changing book, Man's Search for Meaning, which I think is a must-read for all humans on this planet. And I want to quote, and this is the quote to me that puts everything else in perspective. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So what is that? We have no control over most things that befall us, most circumstances, most adversities that happen, but there is something we can control, and that is how we respond to what happens to us. And when I first read that book in graduate school, life-changing. Why? Because most of us judge our lives based on our circumstances. Oh, this happened. I'm miserable. That happened. How could you feel good? Yes, things happen and they get us upset. However, that's not where our power lies. Our power lies in how we respond, how we choose. And that's a key word, how we choose to respond, right? Well, I mean, so many people, Nelson Mandela, when he was in prison for years, look at how he grew in there. Christopher Reeve, after he got paralyzed from his horse accident, he claims from his documentary, from his books, that he had a more meaningful life after than when he was the Superman star, because of all the good he felt he was doing and impacting people with his messages while he was sitting there trying to communicate with a tray through his keyboard. So it is how we take what happens to us and utilize it. That's where our power lies. And that's where we get ourselves out of victimhood. Because yes, we're victim to our circumstances. Nobody asked for cancer. Nobody asked, God forbid, for a drunken driver to hit your car. Nobody asked for any of this bad stuff. But once it's there, what are we going to do with it?
Yeah. And that is so important to keep that front of mind, because I do feel like there are those circumstances that, of course, people need to work through, because we do ask why. It is natural.
Of course.
Why? Why did this happen to me? Why did this happen to us? Why did this happen to her? Why did this happen to him? That's just very organic. That's very normal. And so I want to normalize that too, because I think we go through that because it's our first reaction.
Yes. And that's okay.
Yes.
But it's not okay to stay there.
No.
Back when I got my daughter's diagnosis, I was living in that for months. And that sucks you dry and keeps you really in a dark place. Now, when I got my diagnosis, and I remember this, I was brought up to my room from the ER. It was like 11 o'clock at night. It was dark. My roommate was snoring away. My husband couldn't stay over because it was the end of COVID. And I'm laying in the dark after I got this grueling diagnosis, which didn't end up to be true. The non-Hodgkin was given to me 6 days later, but the initial diagnosis was like, put me in hospice. And all I could think of was, yeah, why me? I exercise, I don't smoke, I don't drink, I eat healthy. And that's what came to me, is why me? And then I really shifted it within maybe 5 minutes and said, wait a second, I'm not going down that path now. That's not going to serve me, especially if I don't have too long to live. That's going to be poison to my blood. And I worked through this. So what do other people say naturally? They say, why not me? I didn't quite get to the point of why not me, but it was more like, okay, I'm going to start to learn to accept this. This is going to be my journey now for as long as I have. I happen to be religious. I believe in God. And if this is God's will and this is my time, I will learn to accept it with the time I have. And that's how I kind of changed it. Initially, yeah, for those 5 minutes, why me now? And then I also said to myself, heck, I'm in this business. I work with 30-year-olds who are suffering with breast cancer. So like, who am I to complain? But everything's relative. You still don't want that to be your fate, right? If you still feel like a vibrant person. And I said, I love life so much. I want more life. But that's the key, that you don't remain stuck in something that's going to not do you well at all. But that's because of the work that I was able to process this different, I believe,
Yeah,
for me.
absolutely. But the work and the years of work, working with yourself to the years of working with others and understanding what it means to get out of the way of yourself, to get
Yeah,
unstuck, to get to a place where you're responding versus reacting.
yeah,
And that response is so important when you want to move forward for the wellness of your mind and body.
yes,
And
yes.
that is so critical. So, can you talk about some parts of or a part of your treatment and recovery that changed the way you saw yourself and your purpose?
I just want to say when you said the differentiation between respond and react is so crucial. It's so key
Yeah.
because response is more intentional. React is more, like you blink an eye, you just react. And that doesn't serve us. Not to say that it's hard. It's hard work to step back and say, I'm going to respond. And if I could just say again before going on, another quote by Viktor Frankl. Again, he's my guy. About responding. This is a wonderful quote. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
And I believe that too. Working, Harriet, in lock facilities for years, and one of the largest lock facilities was Sacramento County Mental Health that I worked in for 3 years. And people were coming in for triage. Law enforcement was bringing people back. You had a lot of things going on. And one of the things that I learned is that there is a key to taking a moment and having your client actually sit there and breathe and take in some peace of mind, peace of space, and get them to a certain level where they could actually respond versus what they were doing prior to coming in was reacting. One
Mhm.
of the things that I also look at when we look at response is what is it? Because some people may not be in the logical space at the moment to think about what is it that I want in the long run? What is my long-term goal for my response, not my reaction? Because a reaction won't necessarily get you to that goal.
Right,
A response will.
right.
And so there has been a lot of learning curves for me as well as a person, as well as somebody who's worked in the field of human services and therapy and doing triage about what works for me, what might work for somebody else. And so, what worked for you when you were in treatment and
Mhm.
recovery?
Mhm.
What was your purpose? What changed for you? What clicked for you where you said, okay, my response to this is going to be?
So I have to say something funny about when you say what works. So in positive psychology, they have a cute little thing. It's called WWW, one of the little tools. WWW, and it's not a website. It's what's working well.
Yes.
I
Cute.
love that. So
Yes.
when I was going through my treatment, I was really looking around for the what's working well here. Like that's the light through the darkness, right? Well, what
Yes.
was working well was if I had to get it, at least I got it in the warm months. I live in New York and we have the four seasons. It wasn't winter, it was spring into summer. I could be out on my deck. I could have visitors visit me outside. Had it been the winter, I'd be stuck cooped up. Nobody would come in because I'd be afraid of germs and I couldn't do anything. So when I was feeling a little bit okay, I would go out to a park, be amidst flowers, go to the ocean, sit and listen to the waves, even if it was just a half hour, just to be amidst beauty and nature, which is something that fills me. So the WWW was really taking what's working well here and saying, okay, I'm going to be very intentional about staying present because that's hard because we know anxiety is fear of the future and I can't let myself spiral. And I'm terribly afraid of, let's say I had to do 6 rounds, round 4, round 5. I lost a lot of weight. I'm small to begin with. What if my body succumbs? What if I don't make it through? That was anxiety pulling at me. So I had to pull it back and be very intentional about staying present. Now, we all talk about mindfulness and present. It's so overused, but you know what? It really is important to quell anxiety when you're in the throes of a crisis. So for me, it became one day at a time, 1 week at a time, one cycle at a time. So at cycle 2, I wasn't going to let myself go thinking about 4 and 5 if I'm going to still be here and survive with all my weight loss. I was saying, okay, I got through this cycle. Now I'm on round 2. Okay, this first week was rough. Got through it. Now we're on the second week. I had chemo every 3 weeks. That was my cycle. So the first week was the actual treatment, which I actually did at home. I carried the little fanny pack and it was being infused in me 5 days. So week 1 was the treatment. Week 2 was not so great. Week 3, I was coming out of it. So I'd go out more. And then the next week, start all over again. So what was working well, each time it was, okay, thank God, got through this one. Now we're on to the next one. So I tried to stay very focused and present on each little piece that was working. Oh, today I was able to go out for an hour. I didn't lay on the couch all day. Today I was able to water my plants, little bits and pieces. And that was a very big coping tool.
That is so important. You actually beat me to my next question, which was what practices help you stay grounded in the midst of the uncertainty? And those little bits and staying present and in the moment and looking at the treatment that you're in, not 3 weeks away, not 6 weeks away, not 9 weeks away, or am I going to make it? But
Right.
here's today.
Right.
Here's today's treatment. I
Right.
get to go and step out into my garden. I get to go and step out onto my deck. I get to go and step out and just water the plants. Whatever it is, that's WWW. What's working well, right?
What's working well? What went well? Yeah.
What went well? That's fantastic. I love that. That is a great tip. So think WWW, what's working well? What works well? And that keeps you out of that fear mode, that uncertainty, because that uncertainty and that anxiety can create a lot of different feelings in the body. It can lead to unwellness. So I do really appreciate everything that you mentioned here. There's so many great steps, so many great takeaways. We've talked about the why me, the response versus the reaction. We've talked about the different tips, the WWW. And if you haven't heard all of this podcast, go back and listen to what the WWW is. And my last question for you as we come to the close of the interview is, what is one tip you can share for those currently navigating cancer or supporting someone who is? What's one simple but powerful piece of advice you'd offer?
Look for the bits of light. It's there within the darkness. It may not be easy to find, but look for it, seek it out, even if it's the tiniest glimmers of light, and hold on to it and stay present. Easier said than done, but doable.
Yes.
It's a mindset. It's all about our mindset.
And I would also say, look for help. If you can't do this on your own, seek help.
Definitely.
Yes. Thank you, Harriet, for joining me on the Core Women podcast.
Thank you, Summer. It was great. Great talk.
It's been a pleasure. You can follow Harriet Cabelly on LinkedIn and on Instagram at Rebuild Life Now.
Thank you for joining us on the Core Women podcast with Dr. Summer Watson. We're so glad you're here and would love to connect more with you. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Core Women, and on Twitter at Core Women 1. For more about Core Women and Dr. Watson, visit corewomen.com. Want more support and resources for amazing women like you? Great! Join Dr. Watson and Jen Fontanilla at the Life, Love, and Money Collective, a Core Women production that aids in understanding the key traits that might be getting in the way of living a life that you are absolutely passionate about. Connect with Summer and Jen and find out more at thelifeloveandmoney.com.